are going to we are hosting an authors circle. I'm Sueanne Pacheco, and I'm joined by Dave Rogers and Jacqueline Ferguson. Hello, everyone.
Greetings.
Hello.
So today we're going to be talking about our author's journey and kind of discuss what that is, what your learnings have been, and what your experiences with it have been. Jacqueline, would you like to start with what inspired you to write your book?
Sure. What inspired me to write my book was a crisis a number of years ago that really made me question where the feminine was in humanity, where the feminine side of God was. And so I just went on an inner journey and an outer journey. And it just sort of morphed into a book that I felt that, I guess, more females, but males as well, had to understand that we are living in such a masculine society that's all about striving and doing and competition. And we all need to find our feminine side, which is nurturing and kindness and compassion. And when we balance those two energies, we just offer the entire world abundance and joy.
And what is the name of your book, and what is it about writing that you enjoy?
My book is called The Seven Guardians. And it is, what is it I enjoy about writing? I think that it really is just about everything I've spoken about and, been argued against by certain religions. I felt that I needed to get it in writing and say, this is me. This is what I believe. This is my authentic self.
And where do you feel, because I am reading your book as well. And one of the things, or there was a phrase in there that stood out for me, and I wanted to get your perspective on it. And it was in chapter 11, and it said, there was a monk looking at a cartoon, and when they went to check on him, they asked him if he was okay. And then when he looked up, he was crying, and he made the statement, he didn't say celibate, he said celebrate. So can you give us a sense of what that celebration is?
Yeah, so I think he's, it's a monk that's translating papyruses. So, I think that he's speaking about Jesus. And one of the things I believe is that when the church decided to make Jesus celibate, they stripped him of his humanity, because sexuality is very human. And it's, if it's not done from ego desire, it's done with a soul involvement, it's a beautiful thing. And that when we, degrade our bodies and say that they're not, those things aren't good, then we're not celebrating life. We're not celebrating with every part of us. And I think that would be Jesus's message. Celebrate life. What are you getting so down about? Yeah, there's pain, there's suffering, those things happen, but just continually celebrate every little thing that comes into our lives.
And I feel that part of that is also because when you mentioned the word stripped, and so it's also being stripped of our connection to who we are within. Mm-hmm. And so when we have that separation and are going through our journeys along those lines, we often feel very disconnected with a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And so do you feel in writing this book, you have found or become more stronger and more centered as an individual and as an author? What is that experience for you like?
Yes, very much so. I think that, we were speaking earlier about our throat chakras, and mine has been shut most of my life. And I constantly have to work on it and clear it. And I think that's because I've never felt that I could speak my authenticity, that I was often forced, I was forced from birth into a religion that didn't speak to me, that oppressed me, that shut me down, that made me not feel worthy. Original sin is put so much guilt and shame on humans that, it's so difficult for us to raise our vibration and actually feel worthy, that our bodies are worthy, our divinity is worthy.
And Dave, you talk a lot about vibration and also looking at the world from new eyes. Can you speak a little bit about your book and what your author experience has been like for you, and how has it changed your perspective now that you are looking to connect with more people?
Well, thank you for the question. And Jacqueline, your theme of your book was to really bring in the divine feminine love and compassion. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so this is what the ironic part of it, because I then met you and I had just finished my book, which was Get 2020 Vision. And this is to impact life with compassion, patience, and curiosity. And so what this book for me was really about was to bring a whole new sense of communication for men and to assist men with the traumas that they go through, and to bring in that compassion, which is such a key component of self-like and self-love versus self-loathing. And so that is a book that I shared stories of the way that men are going through life right now. And the self-beating is so treacherous that many of them are resorting to this feeling of isolation, then leading to anger, revenge, violence, as opposed to connecting and celebrating their divine masculine, which again is very uplifting, supportive, encouraging, inspirational. And if you can bring in that divine feminine, divine masculine inside, what comes out is a fullness to celebrate life and to bring in patience when people might see things differently. And in fact, that difference perspective might lead to a whole new level of illumination or awareness. And that's what's been beautiful about meeting people with different perspectives. And I have a feeling, Sueanne, that's a little bit what your book did, is that you, as somebody who's not only written a book and really developed characters in your book, and who really developed a genre of communication, there's been a deep dive for you to understand what makes people tick. And so I'll flip it around a little bit and ask you, what was the biggest lesson that you got from writing your book, and maybe even shift it, and now what are you writing? So this idea of a writer's circle or an author's circle, it's about celebrating that each of us has gone inside to express something and let it out. And now we're also doing some cool things that we might want to share with people.
Well, for me, it's transformational. In writing this book, because I'm targeting it, my book is Mrs. Langlois House, and I write for the young adult audience. And I love stories. I fell in love with the written word from a young child, from a very young age. And stories resonate with young children. And so I'm writing to inspire. And so by, crafting the stories based on some experiences that they may be feeling, in this case, this particular character, Nix, she is fighting her independence, but at the same time afraid of her independence. She's going through that transformation in that part of her life. And so with that in mind, and with the backdrop of what she's experiencing, my hope is that when they read this novel, they get a sense that, you know what, I'm going through this as well. I feel like what this character is feeling. And so there is a way for me to move on and move forward. And also, hey, you know what? This person understands where I'm going through and what I'm hopefully will be able to do. And so again, it's going back to what we said before, looking at things from new eyes. And there are hidden truths in the novel. And there's also an exploration of your state of consciousness in the novel.
I think, Sueanne, I wanted to ask you, so what this book, your book, I finished it last night, and what it spoke to me about was intergenerational trauma. That was the big
Yes,
theme that spoke out to me is, the pain and suffering that a grandmother's life, even though you don't know what happened to her, can affect that third generation. So are there personal experiences for you that come through in your book?
there are some personal experiences that come through, and this is very much about, how cultural expectations are imposed on women and how that impacts them. And it oftentimes is confusing. And so, yes, there are some personal experiences in there. Some of it is also my transformation going from various stages through my life, but there's also pieces based on experiences of people that I have known and still know that I've pulled into this story as well. And so my hope is that whoever reads the book gets a sense that we all go through these experiences, but not to give up on yourself.
Beautiful.
When I think of intergenerational trauma, it's something that I've been very curious about over the last 15 years. I love the idea of going back and studying a little bit of our ancestors. And one of the things that's been great this year is doing things like moon ceremony, where we go and we honor the fullness of the moon, yet we also feel our fullness when we think of our ancestors and our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents. And even if we didn't know them, there's this element that they're in our DNA. And then there's this whole element that the traumas that they went through, perhaps those traumas were passed on generation to generation. And part of our role might be to have this awareness of when we behave or react to things. Sometimes it's not even our stuff. It might be our ancestral stuff. And when we slow down and we connect to Mother Earth, Gaia, we have a ability to see things, as Sueanne asked, new eyes, new feelings, new triggers. Yet we have the ability to bring a new level of consciousness in through breath or meditation or laughter. And then we can respond differently the next time we're triggered, because we know that that wasn't even our stuff. Yet it can be so curious on whose stuff it was. And when you're talking about intergenerational, Jacqueline, about some of the work that you did in your book with Mary Magdalene, do you have a feeling that Mary Magdalene is some way or somehow in your DNA?
Yes, I honestly think we all are. I think there's separation as an illusion. So we're all interconnected. We're all, attached to one another in some way or another. I think for me, Mary Magdalene is a goddess archetype that carries love and compassion. And, when you think about it, they tried to obliterate her from history for 2,000 years. And she's been found again, and she's making her way globally. There's this huge Mary Magdalene wave going on right now. And so she's making this massive comeback. And I think that's because now the earth, humanity is waking up to say the divine feminine needs, to be awakened in us. So yes, definitely in my DNA.
And Sueanne, when you hear of Mary Magdalene, again, you have had a religious upbringing, you have had a cultural upbringing. In what ways have you connected or reconnected with Mother Earth or Mary Magdalene in the self-nurturing of 2020, 2021? In what ways has that served you in your journey?
Well, for me, it's been a reawakening for me. So as a young child growing up in the Catholic Church, outside of that, I've always had a sense of connection to what was within. And I often surprise a lot of my friends when having conversations with them I would say certain things that would totally confuse them. So I realized very early that I spoke from a different realm than some of my friends. And, life takes over. And I lost that connection at some point. And so now I'm going through the process of finding my center again, feeling grounded again. And I'm finding self-love again. I spent, because what happens is, because you're going through life trying to understand who you are and your connection to the whole dynamics of everything that's going on and to the people in your life, it often makes for feelings of alone. And so, I'm the type of person that I give a lot of myself, but I don't give enough to myself. And so I'm learning how to love myself and be centered with myself so that I can be of more service to others. I hope that answers your question. But and so for Mary Magdalene, for me, when I'm sort of where Jacqueline is. Women are central to life. We are the ones that are central to families. We're central to the whole existence of who we are in our diversity. And so when you negate a woman, you are negating the existence of life and the miracle of life and the essence of life and the truth of life. And so it is really important that we honor all the women, including Mary Magdalene, because they were giving us and sharing with us what it means to listen to and be one with our souls.
Beautiful. I should have had you write the sum on the back of my book. I had a quick question for Dave, if that's okay. So one of the things, as you spoke about, we've been getting together for these monthly moon circles, and we kind of stepped out of our comfort zone and joined another group the other night. One of the things that really, really affected me was the woman who was, I guess, the leader of that group continually mentioned that men were not typically invited to their women's circles. I guess I wanted to know how you felt about that, because we're a very inclusive group. And I think that, if we step out and decide, well, we're, all about the divine feminine, we just become feminists. We don't want to be feminists. We want to marry the masculine and the feminine together. So how do you feel about what was said that men were excluded usually?
Thank you for the question. I looked at it, and actually it was very wonderful to be part of the lodge ceremony, because I was able to do a really cool debrief. I got up at 2:22 in the morning and wrote down notes, and I did notice what was triggered and the way I responded. And I was able to come up with this beautiful map of, is this coming from love? Is this coming from fear? Is this coming from isolation? And to detach from what I wrote, just allowing it to be. And so when people are in a women's circle and it's nurturing and it's healing and it's releasing, that's beautiful. And there might be the point where they start going to men bashing, and there will be people in the circle who see that and voice or not, and that's okay, because like the quote we shared a little earlier, is everyone's spiritual journey is perfect. And so for me now to apply that additional wisdom that has unfolded because of some of the work that I've been doing even in the last week, there was a couple of people who were really sad, they were really angry, and they perhaps are staying in that space and they can't get out. And the curiosity was, perhaps it does require an injection of compassionate yang, or perhaps it requires an infusion of some positive yin. And so this dynamic of yin and yang, if we can share it in such a way that it doesn't become mixed and, excuse the expression, bastardized by interpretation, one of the ways to get going is to get off our butt and go. And that's considered a yang energy. The other time is to self-nurture and maybe spend an extra half an hour in bed and curled up in a ball and sucking our thumb. And that can be a really nurturing thing. And it can be nurturing for men or women, because guess what? We have both of us in us. Mm-hmm. And so those who beat up men, they're beating up a part of themselves. And that's mm-hmm. the message that I guess I would be sharing if I was invited into a women's exclusive circle. And there might be some woman who has got 100 times more yang than me, because guess what? A lot of corporations whose powerful mm-hmm. executives aren't even feminine, divine feminine yin. They're ultra masculine yang. And that's how they get to the top of the corporate ladder. And so it's quite a fascinating dynamic that, because I have had various life experiences, there's a noticing of it. Yet there's also, today at least, I'm experiencing not a huge energetic charge to it that there used to be. Because yang versus yang, we see what that happens. Mm-hmm. And that's the anger, the violence, and the many cases, the world order we have right now, because it has been such a yang world. Mm-hmm. And so what you're both looking to do is to bring in a respect of the yin, a respect of the yang, and seeing mm-hmm. how it can be nurtured in a way that people are listened to with respect and with kindness and with patience.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Really quickly. So based on what you just shared with us, do you feel men are becoming more comfortable with being vulnerable?
Well, there is a noticeable shift in men speaking about vulnerability, authenticity, genuineness. Yet the teeter-totter would be still very steep, that many men haven't been taught it and they don't know how to get started. And so there is a large portion of the population that could benefit from being curious about it and letting go of some of the intergenerational survival skills that have been taught to men of kill or be killed. Mm-hmm. And so that is part of the
that one just gave me shivers.
Generational lessons that we can share. So if you're gonna go and do the haka and get all stirred up, what's beautiful about a sweat lodge experience is that we have the singing, we have the energy movement. So some of these men who want to let the energy flow, they're going to have to do things that are probably different than what they used to do. And that can be frightening, and that frightening can be very triggering. And that's where the invitation to perhaps explore new ways to express. And that's what's beautiful, is like when I see some of these 55 or 60 or 70-year-old men starting to do art, painting, poetry, it's incredible. And hopefully that can inspire our 20-year-olds. And that's what's beautiful, is that some of our 20-year-olds are inspired by music and a different expression of hip hop or a different expression of their creative flow. And that's what's occurring, I believe. So yes, it's happening more, yet there's still a very big population that feels isolated.
That flowed into a really wonderful story. I phoned my son Jonathan yesterday, who's 23. And when he answered the phone, he was laughing. And I said, "What are you laughing about?" He said, "Mom, you called, and Mac Miller's Divine Feminine album was just starting on my..." And he said, and I just looked at it and went, of course my mom would phone me at that exact time.
Beautiful. So we've got about 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes left. I guess my question would be, is as you've gone from the author of your first book and you're moving into the other writing initiatives and projects, what has been a lesson you had from the first experience, and what maybe a change you'll do for your second or third project? And I'll ask that to Sueanne to start off with, and then to Jacqueline.
what I will be doing slightly differently is being getting more focused on the marketing side of the writing. I am in the process now of developing a young adults book series. I've written book 1, working on draft 2. And so I'm taking my learnings from the first one. I did do a book launch for the first one, but now I'm going to make tweaks to how I would do the book launch a little bit differently. So I'm looking at more social media pieces that I would do in promoting the next book series.
Thank you. Jacqueline?
I think I'd have a little bit of Sueanne influence on me for the next book. Mine was, we talked about it earlier that I'm very spontaneous. So it was just, a lot of no book outline, no idea where it was going. The chapters were actually labeled after I wrote the book. So I think for my next one, I might get a little more structure and actually have an outline and know exactly what chapter is going to look like.
And I'll say that I've discovered, again, partially from the discussions I've had with our trust circle, is that if I've got a little template, I can usually create a new story or a new project fairly quickly. It's that little outline that I sometimes struggle with. And today, actually, in my meditation, I just really thought of allowing some of my writing to become more into little short movies or short videos, and that have high impact, that have messages embedded. So I'm very curious, and even some of the downloads that happened this morning in meditation, and just even today's mantra of the day, which is everyone's spiritual journey is perfect. I'm having a feeling that it's going to be a nice seedling for some of the content that's going to flow in the weeks and months ahead. So I'm pretty excited about that. So in the last minute and a half, why don't we sort of repeat the ways that people can reach out and get a copy of your book, or any other message that comes from you on this beautiful day in autumn in the Northern Hemisphere. Sueanne, you want to start us off?
Well, if you are interested in reading Mrs. Langlois House, you can go to the Friesen Press website as well. You can go to Barnes and Nobles, and also my website, which is sueannepacheco.com, if you're looking to get a copy of the book.
Very good. Jacqueline?
So I have a website as well, jacquelineferguson.com. There you can purchase the book. You can also purchase it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and there's the workbook that goes with it. It's already launched, so you can have the book and the workbook. And yeah, thank you so much, Dave, for having us on here. This was wonderful.
And thank you both very much. For me, you can reach out to Amazon for Get 2020 Vision, awesome coaching, continual shift, with Dave Rogers on YouTube, and this will also be broadcasted on our partner Lead Pedal Radio, and so there will be opportunities for our wonderful trucking community and our transportation community to also be involved in some of the sharings that we've had today. And I have a feeling there might be some wonderful poets or authors in process in that group of people that make such a great impact on ensuring that we have our foods and our fruits and our supplies that delivered at a time where there's a huge demand for that industry. So thank you very much for all of our partners and our platforms. And Sueanne, did you want to add an extra little comment there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we all each have our stories and our perspectives. And so if you are feeling the vision to write your story in your authentic self.
Beautiful.
Thank you so very much, and wishing everybody an absolutely brilliant day, week, and month ahead.
Thank you.